Could you count to 5 for me, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Perfect. So we're rolling now. Why did you get into business?
Hereditary illness. I thought I was going to avoid it. I tried to avoid it. And I thought, insurance, I don't know exactly what it is, but it just didn't strike me as something that was as exciting to get involved with. And then there was a summer when I was going to college and I needed some work. And my father said, well, why don't you come and work in the business? And I started off being the janitor, vacuuming, of all things. That was fine. I got exposed to the office environment a little bit. And that led to, I could pay you a little more money if you would maybe get your level 1 license and start working the auto plan counter on the weekends. Started doing that, and I got to meet some people that worked there that were really, really nice. I got to meet more people in the industry. I always had a lot of respect for the friends that were in his community, friends that he had in the industry that we saw socially. We would hike with and go to dinner with, and they were always high quality people. So getting more exposure to them was also a really nice thing. The other interesting thing about it is that, fathers and sons, there's always sort of a point where you kind of go your separate ways a little bit. And this was an opportunity to kind of come back and think, well, this is what my father spends a good chunk of his life doing. It's paid the bills for our family for many, many years. It'd be interesting to see this side of him. And that's kind of what slowly drew me in.
And if you were to sit there and reflect back.
Your eyes to him.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I don't exist.
Okay.
When you
Thanks.
reflect on him, and you're standing back and sort of just seeing him across the room, what do you see?
I see a man I have a lot of respect for. I feel very privileged and grateful to have been able to work with him and build a relationship with him, where we've taken something that was, this big and we've made it into something this big, probably beyond what either one of us ever really expected. And
Hold on. You're gonna die. What happened? Battery?
No, it's half.
Huh?
It's on half.
Hey, so you're sitting on the other side of the room, and you're looking at your dad. What do you see?
I see a man I have a lot of respect for, and someone that I'm very grateful to for having the opportunity to been able to have worked with him and built something together as a father and son team. It's a pretty exceptional opportunity that I know a lot of people don't get. And it's one where there was a lot of learning involved with that, right? And the thing about family businesses that, we've learned through trial and error is that, when you're bridging Gen 1 and Gen 2 and bringing them together to work together to move forward, there's different ideas and there's different thoughts about things. And I had spent a few years not working in the family business, so got into insurance and then went and worked in the United States and worked for different companies and brokerages, and then came back to work with him again. And so you have different ideas and different thoughts about the direction of the future. And I would say that over the course of time, I think at the beginning, we were both sort of pulling on opposite sides in terms of the direction of the company. We both wanted the same outcome, which was, to compete smarter, to grow and get bigger, and to be a real competitive force in the Lower Mainland. And sometimes different ideas of how to get there, and frankly, different speeds of how to get there. But there was some emotional maturity required on my part in understanding his style. And so in the beginning, as I was saying, we pulled it from side to side, and then we found a sweet spot, and then we were both just pulling it forward, and things really took off for both of us.
You mentioned, you were explaining to me a really nice part about, I think we have it, but where there's a point in a father-son's relationship where you separate and go, let's do that part again.
Yes, a dream of mine was wanting to live and work in New York. And my father's idea was that I would succeed him in the business. And, online job boards first came out, and I was able to secure a position and get a job, which was not something not the outcome I was expecting. I thought it was a bit of a flyer, but it really worked out. And so one of the hardest phone calls I ever to make to him was to call him up and say, listen, I'm going to take this opportunity. I don't think I'll be succeeding the family business, and you need to move forward without me in your plans in the future. And I would imagine it was probably a bittersweet moment for him. You know, on one hand, he told me, he said, well, listen, I'm really proud of you, and I'm proud no matter what you do. And but at the same time, you know, I'm off and I'm moving away, and I didn't know if and when I would ever be coming back. So.
And when you look at your father also, not just out of respect, what characteristics or what values does he bring to the business that makes it so special?
He's compassionate, but firm. Jim has a laser focus. There could be, you know, bombs going off around his desk and all sorts of things going on, and he has an ability just to see it through, to stay the course. And that's something I really admire and respect in him.
Now also there's a strong social conscience that seems to prevail in this with him. Does that social conscience kind of translate to you?
How do you mean social? What do you mean when you say
Well,
social
conscience
conscience?
in terms of welfare of others, taking care of people. He seems to be doing a lot outside. His sense of community and the values of community.
Yes. Yeah, I would say that's kind of I don't know whether it's a family DNA, but it's certainly become something that's really important to me, and it's important to share in our culture with our employees.
Yeah, I think let's stop for a second.
Sure.
Now we're going to go through a little bit of homes and stuff like that. So I guess my question to you is that what is the foundation of that respect? And does it include morality? Does it include welfare of others? Or?
Yes. I mean, above all, we believe in doing the right thing. And that translates, you know, in the social giving that we do and getting on boards and not-for-profit boards together and giving back into the community. You know, he does have a very strong social conscience in that regard in terms of what he believes we're ultimately here to do, in addition to provide for ourselves, but also to help make the world a little bit better, even if it's just incrementally.
In terms of you as a broker now, why are these values kind of translatable within in selling insurance and being part of the community and having those social values from your perspective?
Waking up to make more money is not enough to get me out of bed and into the office. There needs to be a higher purpose.
But now we're going to talk more in terms of in brokers as a sense, not just your father.
Okay.
How does insurance relate to having a social responsibility or welfare in the community?
Well, the community, you know, the insurance community touches everything in the community. You know, it touches people's lives. I mean, their homes, their personal assets. You know, Bob Vickerstaff said it best, that planes don't fly and cars don't drive and buildings don't get built until there's insurance in place. So we do have a role, albeit a quieter one unless there's a catastrophe, but a quieter one in everyday lives. And so I think that draws us in to people, particularly when there's a disaster. And, you know, when we're talking to a client because they've had a claim, quite often we're talking to them on their worst day. And so you need some social conscience and some empathy and some, you know, emotional skills around that to realize that they're having a horrible day. And our job is to help just fund the ability for them to get their life back to normal as quickly as possible.
Excellent answer. In terms of, you know, the business right now is changing. It's developing. And you've even seen a change over the period of time. So we're going to a lot more about the online and stuff, but will there always be a place for the broker?
I think there will be. You know, a lot of people need advice, and going to one spot and trusting in one product is not. It's not something that everybody wants. There was a lot of talk for a number of years about, you know, brokers will be ultimately disintermediated completely because there's you know, money to be saved there, costs can be reduced, maybe even efficiencies. However, at the end of the day, recent data is showing that advice is critical to someone making a decision. They might start an insurance purchase transaction online, but more often than not, it's being closed over the phone, or it's being closed with an advice component. And I don't ever see that going away.
What do you see in the future of insurance brokers?
Scale. I think scale will be critical. You know, markets are consolidating. If you want to be relevant with particular insurers, you need to have a particular volume, I think, to be important to them. Secondly, optimization and efficiencies, keystrokes, right? Drilling down on the measures of everyday work And at the same time, culture. I mean, Jim Collins said culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it really is true. So how do we breed a culture of people that feel empowered to want to obtain and retain ideal clients and kind of deliver that wow factor? And we haven't quite figured that out, but we're on our way to getting it there. And, so we're only as good as the people that are standing with us and behind us.
If you were to look back on yourself, what values and characteristics do you bring that make you what's that?
HVAC.
Okay, let's stop a second.
Yeah.
So when you started off, you were telling me that you had we won't be using my voice, fortunately. You started off with saying that your visions were different, but now they really are a common vision. What is your vision of where the company started, where it is, and then where it's going to end up? In terms of corporate vision.
Mm-hmm. The company started with a focus on sort of smaller personal products, and it's grown to a focus on a broader range of commercial products. And I see us continuing along that path. I see the organization becoming more and more and more.
Okay, stop.
Okay.
You were starting off, and we started with this vision and how it developed into a new vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll grow into a more and more sales-oriented culture. I see our people doing less of the day-to-day sort of.
Can you go back? I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Can you go back? And we started with small. I love that little section. And we started with small, and then we moved to corporate. Maybe.
Sure. So we started off being small and focused on small personal transactions and smaller businesses, and then we expanded into larger corporations and broader range of commercial business products. And I see us continuing along that path. And in the process, I see people working for us doing less administratively and more on the relationship front. And what I mean by that is I think that technology is going to replace some of the day-to-day mundane tasks and free them up to do what ultimately is their highest and best use of time, and really the broker's niche strategy of competition, and that is relationship and advice. And the more time we have to build the relationship and provide quality advice, the tighter and stickier those relationships are going to be, and the more we can attract to us.
Well, we haven't heard that one that way.